way better role. Way better. Like, love it. I'm like,
Ready?
okay. This is Haley. And this is Bailey. You're listening to Unleashed.
Bailey's in Amsterdam.
Kind of. I'm a little outside of it, but yeah, same. Kinda.
Isn't that like the same
Ish.
thing?
I don't know. It's The Hague, but I'm definitely saying it wrong because it's not pronounced like that here. Haley, are you currently thinking about quitting social media? Or have you ever thought about quitting social media?
All the time. I think about it
Every day. That's
every
literally
day.
what you're saying.
Every day. I think I'm
so
like
yes, you are to both.
I'm gonna quit today, and then I come back again in another hour. And then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna quit again.
You're like, never mind. I love it. No, I don't. I don't.
No. It's a bittersweet relationship for sure. For sure, Z's. What about you?
I've definitely thought about it. And I feel like if you've done social media as like a job, I feel like at some point you've thought about it. And even if you haven't done it as a job and you just like are on social media, I feel like everyone's thought about like deleting the app or quitting social media, or everyone at some point I feel like says social media sucks. And I feel like that's just something you hear all the time, and it just depends on where you're at. And especially us who are like on social media all the time, I feel like it can come in waves.
Oh, for sure. Well, and like you said, even if it's like not a job, I know so many people who take like social media detoxes, as and I use air quotes, like they just step away from it for a hot minute just to kind of reset a little bit. Just especially when it's like during like pivotal moments in the event, like during presidential campaigns or during like holidays or during, I don't know, just like things that are pretty intense on social media. It can be really heavy and hard to deal with. And so I know that that's when I see a lot of people kind of taking a step back.
Yeah, I feel like it just depends where you're at. Like I feel like I try and take a step back sometimes, but then with it being work, it's really hard to find that balance of like taking a step back, but making sure you're working still. I don't know. I feel like I've at least struggled to find that balance of like
Yeah.
stepping back, because you can burn out so easy. At least I feel like I've talked to so many people that are like, I'm burnt out.
Oh yeah. I told Bryce when I first began like social media and all that stuff that I wouldn't do it if it wasn't making me happy, and I wouldn't let myself get to the point of burnout. And I think I've had lately the problem of, it's not that I have burnout, but I've taken like a break just because I've been traveling. Like, I haven't been as like sitting down and working with it as much. And so I'm like, the thought of having to like get back into the rhythm of working in it or just like doing it is like, nah, I'm good. Like finding the swing of getting back into the working, you know?
I totally get that. I feel like I've almost found that if I can step back, like you said, you're like doing a little here and you're doing a little there, like that's good little breaks. But I almost found that like when I completely like take a weekend where it's like no social media, no work, no taking photos, just like actually take a break, I'm almost in a better position for a longer amount of time than when I just like take mini breaks, because I feel like you don't really get a break and it's so hard to come back. I agree with that. Like when I was in Barcelona and I was like, I posted like one day and then I think I took 6 days off from like posting or something like that, which is like a long time. I do not remember the last time I did that. I remember being like, I have to post when it became like too long. So I was like, I'm just going to enjoy not having something lined up. It's not that you don't like doing it. It's just,
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I feel like unless you do it, it's like, it's confusing.
So true. So you said you didn't take any pictures, and it's funny because that reminded me. I don't know where we were, but we were driving, and I just like took a picture of a random thing, and I was like, I take so many random pictures that I'm like have no intentions of doing anything with. But why do we do that? Like, I'm like, I don't know, like maybe a sunset photo or whatever because it's cool, but like, are you gonna look back and be like, "Oh, that was a cool sunset"? Maybe, but I mean, how often do we really go back and look at those, like, random photos that we take, like, of signs and stuff like that? And I don't know, I just find like my camera roll is, like, very much, like, probably 50% of it's, like, junk photo.
For sure. I feel like that's something I actually really like about social media, is that I almost use it as like a scrapbook or
An
like a
online
place to
scrapbook.
document. Yeah,
Yeah.
like, where it's, like, the main things you really like, and it kinda, like, shares a story, and you can go back and look at it because you find so many times there's so many photos in your camera roll, you don't go back and actually look at everything, and you go like, "Wait, what'd I do then? What happened?" Like,
Yes.
"Wait, like, how many do you have?" I feel like I'm
I was gonna
probably
yeah, I'm
way
gonna
more
pull up
than
my
you.
phone. I was gonna say, how many pictures are in your camera roll right now? I wanna hear what everybody's is. Comment your how many photos are in your camera album, and we'll see who has the most. What do you have, Bailey?
Yeah, I'm so curious. 150,501.
Oh, wait, say that again? Did I hear that right?
Yes, you did. 150,501.
150,000? Oh my gosh. Bailey, what is that?
And
How do you
the
have much
worst thing,
storage?
it's a struggle. The worst thing is you can't do what you used to be able to do with the iPhone where you could plug it in and, like, offload it onto your phone because of iCloud now, and my iCloud is full, and now
That's
my phone is so, like,
yes,
that is really hard when you have too many, and I've been
brutal.
going through on, like, all my flights, I, like, sit and I delete stuff, but it's, like, hard to remember, like, a long time ago, like, "Oh, do I want that memory? Do I not?" Like, you
Yeah,
don't know what it
yeah.
is.
Or, I'll a trick I do is going through the screenshots tab on the
Yeah.
camera roll. That's where I find, like, order confirmation, stuff like that. That's an easy
Yeah,
way
that
to
you don't
clean
need.
things up, yeah, but I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of the stuff I do take pictures, I'm like, "Oh, I could post that to my story," and then I forget, and I'm like, "Man, it's too late now," like, whatever, moment's
Yeah, it's
gone.
yeah,
Moment's gone.
I know.
Well,
Moment is over.
I have not that many. I have 51,000.
I
I have
knew
a
I was gonna beat you
third.
by a lot.
I have a third of what you have.
Oh, I knew I was gonna
That's
have so many 'cause
crazy.
almost every time somebody asks, I don't think I've met somebody that usually, like, when I just randomly ask somebody, I always have more. I'm like, "Darn
But
it."
how many
There's gonna be
videos do you
somebody.
have? That's what I'm curious because I feel like you do you do a lot of videos?
23,668.
Okay, that's actually not as much considering the fact that you have 150,000 total. Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, mine's
and I've already
11,000.
oh, yeah, I mean, that's a lot compared to, like, I guess how many you have. I don't know, kinda same.
I feel like I have more like if you looked at the percentage
Yeah,
overall for
yeah.
what the max, I feel like I have more videos on the amount of but I also YouTube with my phone and you don't. So that
Yeah, YouTube with
definitely
my camera, that would never, never
I
work.
really wish I could do that, but I never remember to bring my camera. So I'm just
I
like, "Well,
know, that is
here's my phone."
hard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But anyway, circling back, that's crazy. Yeah, social media definitely takes a lot of storage on people's phones, whether you realize it or not. I'm very curious to hear what other
yeah,
people's phones have on their like amount of pictures they have and stuff on their phones. It's so funny.
I know. I am so curious about that. I'm definitely leave a comment if you are listening
Yeah.
to this.
So we talked a little bit about trying to prevent burnout. And I mean, so would you consider burnout just like you just are emotionally, physically, just spiritually done with social media? Like you just can't, it's not fun, you don't find joy out of it. It's more of a hassle or it's like you find that it's bringing you down more than it is lifting you up. I mean, is that what you kind of would define as burnout?
Yeah, I feel like it's when, for me at least, like, I'm not excited about creating and editing, and yeah, there's gonna be days for sure, like, you're not gonna love it every single day, but I feel like it's more when it's, like, a long term, and, like, I almost feel like I start to put a lot of pressure on myself with, like, just different layers of the job, and that's when I start to feel like I'm burnt out is when I'm just, like, overthinking everything, nothing creative is coming to me, I, like, almost just need to step back and reset so that I can, like, have a fresh look on it, because then once I at least feel like I'm kind of starting to feel burnt out, then I, like, put pressure on myself and it just gets worse because you're almost, like, trying to force something that, like, being
Yeah,
creative can't really be forced. So I feel like
not
that's
at
when I
all.
usually try and step back because I don't wanna burn out.
No, I totally agree. And I think that for even a part of it is I think burnout can also happen when you're just like you said, you're not getting excited. But when you just find that you're not finding yourself happy being on social media too, like from the people who don't work on social media. I mean, I just remember I would follow people and I'd be scrolling and I would just find myself comparing to other people and it just was like it wasn't healthy. And so I think that can be a form of burnout too.
Yeah, I feel like even if you don't do social media for work and you just are on social media, it's so easy to get burnt out of seeing different things and seeing the highlights of everybody's life and starting to put pressure of, like, "Why does my life not look like that?" And it's like, that's not how lives look. Like, all these perfect things you're seeing on social media, like, that's not exactly how it looks behind the scenes. It's just, like, not possible. So it's so interesting to, like, when you step back, I feel like you're almost able to see that, but when you're in it, it's hard to see, like, how much you're comparing, how much pressure you're putting on yourself because of what you're seeing on the internet. Something I was gonna say earlier was I feel like I was really burnt out right before I actually started taking social media, like, more seriously and started focusing on it more as a job, which was super interesting. I remember stepping back right before, like, I went full time and right before my page actually took off a little and being, like, so frustrated with it, and I was like, "I think I'm just done," and I was, like, about to step back and, like, just not put any, like, energy into it at all, and then I decided to go the completely other route, which is so
Interesting.
interesting.
That
Yeah.
is really
I don't
interesting
know.
because I mean, most people don't push through that stuff, I feel, honestly, especially when it involves, like, it has such a heavy toll on I think, on our mental capacity because it messes with our brains, social media, and when it's our job on top of that, that's just, like, insult to injury. So it's interesting that you push through, and I mean, would you say that you how long did it take for you to kind of un unburn out? I don't know how to say it to not be
Yeah.
burnt out.
That's a good question. I can't really remember. I remember though I was stuck at a certain number for a really long time, and people really like look at that. Like when you're doing it, I feel like you put a lot of pressure on a number, and you start to realize the more you're doing it, that's not everything. And like I've learned that over time. But at that moment, I was stuck for like a year. I think I had like 25,000 followers, and yeah, that is a lot. But in that moment, I was like, I'm stuck. Like, what am I doing? Like, am I doing the right things? Like, do I need to like start over? Do I like I just had like too many thoughts and I was putting so much pressure on something that really like just needed to share what I loved. And when I stepped back and I realized like I'm just going to share what I love doing, what my life's about, and I started doing that, that's when I feel like I kind of found like a joy for it again and I started to love it again when I took the pressure off of looking at the numbers. And that's when my account actually like started to shift again, which is really interesting because I feel like there's so much pressure on numbers when you're like in the social media world, and it's hard not to at
Yeah.
times, but when you step back and you really just enjoy what you're doing and love what you're doing, I think that makes a huge difference. At least for me,
Oh,
that made
totally.
a huge difference. I don't know how difference. I don't know how long though, like, I was in that. I was, like, teaching at the time, and I feel like there were so many other things I can't really, like, remember, like, the time frame on it.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because you said that you started taking social media seriously and before that's kind of like when you started to see a change is that you started treating it more like a job. And that's when you kind of saw a pivot, which is interesting because like for me, it's kind of the opposite. When I feel like it's a job, I don't find joy in it. I don't like it. It becomes very cold and like it's too serious. And so when I treat it more like a hobby, I enjoy it more because there's not as much pressure, I feel. But when I make it more of a job-based thing, I feel that there's a lot more pressure involved with it. So it's interesting that you had that different perspective from it. And I'm glad that it worked out for you in the end too, because I mean, you can tell you are and have worked really hard to get where you're at.
Yeah, it definitely does. It all takes work if you're doing social media. It might not look like it sometimes from some perspectives, but it definitely
Mhm.
does. And I feel like okay, how I said it, I guess maybe is a little different, but when I like it started to take off, also became when I did go into it full time. But I agree with you. There is this interesting balance, and I think that's something I've actually been struggling with more recently, is the job aspect of it because there's a really fun aspect of it. I was gonna actually ask you a question based on this, but there's a really fun aspect of it that's your job. It's so fun, such an amazing job, so unique. But I do feel sometimes it puts this pressure on it that is really hard and sometimes can take the joy out of it. And I was gonna ask you, have you ever wanted it to not be your job anymore, to just be your hobby?
Yeah, that's why I call it my hobby job. Literally combining what we both just said. I've always called it that though, because um, I'm in a circumstance where I don't have to have it be my job, and I'm grateful for that. But I feel like anytime I try to monetize it, it definitely makes it just not enjoyable. But I love what I do, and so I just like I try not to put all my eggs in one basket. But it's I don't know. I want to also feel like I can see myself building something, and I know that making something a job. I mean, what would you define something as a job? Is it because you're making an income off of it? I think that's kind of what everybody would define a job as. I
Yeah,
mean,
I feel like that's like how you would define it.
yeah, okay. And so like I don't feel
But
like if
sometimes
No,
I
go
feel
ahead,
like when
what?
you're doing a startup, I don't know. Yes, I guess, we're gonna get too technical. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We get too technical, tartnical, tartnical. When you get too technical, yeah, obviously. But I lost my thought process. What was I saying? Oh
Sorry.
yeah, oh yeah. No, 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 you're good. Um, the when it becomes a job and then, the aspect of making money, like, yeah, it's cool to see the success and like your work be reflected and to see that income. It's really cool and it's liberating. And I know that people are like, well, your job doesn't have to define like your success. And I agree. I always tell that to Bryce. I'm like, the number in your bank account does not determine your worth or success at all, especially if you're just starting out. I mean, it's just like, there's so much more to it. But with social media, you see all these people doing things and brand deals. And then you also see other people doing their jobs through social media. Like they'll share doing car reviews or something like that, and or being a pilot. I don't know. They just, you see them doing their job through social media. And it can be hard because you're like, what am I doing wrong? I mean, everybody seems to be doing this. And then am I doing something wrong or no? And it's like, no, it's everyone's in a different spot with it. And so it's just kind of an interesting perspective on that.
I agree. I feel like that's something that, like, I've really had to, like, look at too, and you have to step back and look at, like, how is it your job? Because I feel like we were kinda talking about hobby and job, but, like, how is it your job, but also, like, your hobby? Because I feel like you put so much pressure when you're watching everyone be like, "Oh, I got this much and that much." But really, when you think about it, you don't know every little thing behind that. Once you read something that someone shares, you think like, "Oh, it's just black and white," but it's not black and white. Like, there's so many other things behind it that go into it, like, that you don't know, and you're comparing to something that you really can't compare to because you don't know everything. But that's hard when you're looking at social media, and I feel like that's something I've really had to learn, like, doing social media is yes, it's my job, and there's so many aspects of it that I love as my job, but I also have learned that for me to, like, kinda talking about different things we just talked about, but for me to not burn out, for me to enjoy my job, I have to just have fun and love what I'm posting, because if I feel like I'm posting it because it's my job and I have to post this and I have to do that, I feel like I'm not posting what I love, and then you start to feel stuck, and that's something I've been really, like, focusing on this last year is, like, starting to focus on what I wanna post and not feel so stuck, because something we talk about so much and you hear all over social media is you have to niche down, and you start to feel like that's all you can post, and I think that a lot of times too can take, like, the creativity and the excitement of posting out of
Totally.
posting, because you feel like, "Well, if I don't post exactly what I'm supposed to post, it's not gonna do well," and then it's just like you
It
just
gets
get in your
really
head.
repetitive, and then it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
totally. No, that makes sense. I was actually seeing so I saw this clip the other day, and I actually knew about this because I'm a huge fan of her. It's Scarlett Johansson. So I looked for her on Instagram, like, this was several years ago, and I could never find her. I'm like, "Oh, interesting. I wonder if she's just not on social media." And then about 2 weeks ago, she was on a podcast as a guest, and they were talking about how she's not on Instagram or social media, and she's like, "Yeah, I had it for, like, maybe a week, and I found myself just, like, digging into this person's profile for, like, 10 minutes, and I was, like, in their past, and I was like, 'Oh my gosh, I just spent 10 minutes of my life just, like, detail researching this person,' and just, like, was like she went into a downward spiral of it, and she's like, "I found myself wanting these things that I had never wanted before, and all of a sudden I felt like I needed to have these things, and I just didn't like the way it made me feel, and it was just wasting my time." And I was like, "That is so interesting," because I don't know. I don't it's very rare when you hear people don't have social media. Like, I know a few people who don't have it, and, like, obviously certain kids obviously don't have social media, but, like, nowadays when you're, like, our age, it's very normal, and so the fact that she called it out for saying that it can be, like, such a waste of your time, I think it comes down to making sure that you're utilizing it in ways that don't hurt you, because that's also can, lead into burnout, because when you're doing it for and I'm not saying researching people on social media, let's be real. We all Insta stalk and look at other people's Instagrams. I mean, it's there for a reason. I mean, don't post it if you don't want people seeing it. And so it's kind of one of those things that, like, call it for what it is. And if you say you don't do that, I call bullcrap. So, but it's just kind of one of those things that, like, you just have to make sure you find the balance with it. And when you do, you'll find it's a lot easier to manage.
Definitely. I feel like that's something we've actually talked a lot about is, like, how we've kinda I think we even talked no, I think, I know, we talked about this in one of our podcasts, like, how we have turn social media more into, like, a positive and, like, make sure we're following accounts that are positive and all that stuff, and I think it's just so interesting because you have to find that balance and, like, yeah, you can step away from it, but, like, are you gonna find those negative things somewhere else in life? Yeah, probably, like, if that's, like, what you're already drawing in on social media, you're probably gonna find that somewhere else, so it's just, like, creating those healthy habits if it's on social media, if it's off social media, if it's whatever it is, I feel like it's just, like, surround yourself, like we always say, surround yourself with people that make you like, bring you up, that make you happy, and that's the same thing with social media. It's, like, in every aspect, like, even if you delete social media, you're still gonna find that somewhere else probably. You just have to find the, like, healthy balance of, like, following and not Insta stalking too much, I guess, is
Insta stalking.
not going too
All the Insta
not
stalking.
not going too deep into it.
I mean, I'm guilty. I've definitely gone like I'm like, "It's like 12 years ago." Like, "How did I end up here? Holy cow." And then there's those I've seen those reels where people are like, "Can I see the photo?" And they're like, "Don't like anything. I'm like 8 years back." And so they're like, "Okay, I won't like anything." They're like, "Yeah, okay." But, I was gonna ask you a question. What do you think is the number one issue people face when it comes to social media? And from a perspective of not just working, but for, like, everyone.
Yeah, in general, not yeah, and for everyone. I would say it's comparing. I That's what I think. It could be body image, it can be lifestyle, it can any of those things. I feel like that's so many times it's like seeing somebody with a nice I'm gonna use purse, a nice bag, and you're like, "Oh, like, why do they have that?" I know. I'm just like,
In
that's a
reality,
very
it's probably
generic, like,
fake.
little
It's probably a fake one.
yeah, it's like, yeah, you don't know any different, or it's like, okay, like, somebody getting engaged or somebody having a baby or something like that, like, you don't know everything that goes into sometimes I feel like you see somebody on social media and you're like, "Their life is perfect and everything is perfect," and it's like, you know, like, the tiniest bit about that person's life, even if they're sharing so much. We share a lot of our life.
Mhm.
You still can't share everything. It's just not possible, and
No.
like, you just don't know everything, and I think that would be probably probably the biggest thing, at least I feel like, is people comparing and comparing
Mhm.
lifestyles, body image, all those things is just easy to do when you're sitting behind a
Yeah.
screen and staring at the picture perfect photos and videos.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Uh, Comparison's a good one. I definitely think, at least from my perspective, I think bullying is the number one issue we face. I think it is easier for people to be targeted and to hide behind a screen and call people out for unnecessary stuff and names and just straight up harass people. I see it all the time. We were just talking about this the other day, and it's unfortunate, like, how toxic it can be and it can affect someone. I think TikTok is the worst app in the entire world. I hate it. I don't use it anymore. I'll go on it just like look at a couple things like people send me, but I'm not a fan of posting on it just because I got completely like battered by people, just nasty comments for unnecessary things. And so I definitely think bullying is a huge issue we see on social media.
Definitely, people are not it's easy for them to hide up behind a screen and say not nice things, and I think no matter what you do, you're not gonna please everybody.
No.
I was actually this is, like, a very, like, small s comparison, I guess, but I'm gonna use this as an example. I was trying to think of the word. My friend's getting married next year, and she was like, "There's 250 people," and she was talking about how she was, like, at 250 people, and she was like, "How am I gonna make everyone happy?" Pretty much when she was
No.
talking, and I literally was like, "You're never going to make 250 people happy. You need to do what makes you happy.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
it's about
your
you and,
wedding.
like, it's your wedding." But, like, if that's 250 people, like, there's so many more people on the internet, you're never gonna make everybody happy, and you say one thing that's wrong, like, okay, I'll use this is my mistake, but in France, a pastry shop and a bakery shop are very different, but I could not think of the word, and I was doing research, and everywhere you walk, it says pastries because it's the only English word, so I, like, said pastry shop, and people in the comments were like, "That is a bakery, not a pastry shop," and they were so frustrated, and then I literally talked to the guy that owns the store, and he's like, "Oh, it's no big deal, like, people do it all the time, like, it's a really common mistake, like, it's pretty much still a pastry shop," but, like, people on the internet took it so
They're so
seriously, like, it
quick
was
to judge.
yeah, and you're like, "I'm sorry?" Like, I didn't you have to know everything to, like, such a perfection, and it's like, you're just never gonna make everybody happy. Like, that
No,
is, like, the
no.
tiniest example, and that's not even, like, bowling. I'm using very, like, nice examples
Very
because
nice,
I don't
yeah.
wanna bring up the, like
Oh, yeah, the
because it
harsh
could
ones,
get
like,
mean.
they
Yeah.
can get so mean. And like I think it's also with the spread of misinformation. I had a rail that was a travel gadget for a little plain cup holder that you put in like the window, and then it like just sits in the window. Anyway, go to my Instagram if you're curious about it. It's pretty cool. Anyway, people were commenting on it and people were loving it. And it has over 11 million views. I've never had a reel that high in my life. And it was like, and that was the one I posted on TikTok that made me realize I'm like, I'm stepping back from TikTok. No freaking way. And people were like, oh, nice to know that you don't care about people and the plane's going to crash or it's going to light on fire, or, you're going to go to jail with 50,000 for, tampering with the plane. Meanwhile, the flight attendants on the planes are like, that's amazing. And like, they've had it looked at with the FAA. It's like, it's a piece of plastic. It's not going to, if a piece of plastic is going to, damage something, on a plane, we have bigger problems. Like, don't get on that plane. Like, it's just one of those things.
Yeah.
It's so minuscule, but people were saying all these things like that's not allowed by the FAA. And, those things, like it's spreading information that's not allowed. And they're saying, oh, well, when water leaks down the window and it catches the plane on fire, well, it's like if you know anything about how mechanics work in an airplane, the wires aren't in the windows, they're above your heads. And so it's like, no, that's still not true. Like those things are just, and that's such a minuscule example. Like that's how, I mean, have you heard of the game Telephone?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's just like interesting to see how the train of like information gets spread and then misinterpreted or whatever,
Yeah.
and
It's
it's
crazy.
just crazy. And oh, this was really interesting. I saw this fact the other day that said we know more information in the first like 7 minutes of waking up than someone did in their entire life in like the 1950s, because of how much social media and like news can spread and all that stuff, and just we know more than anything that they ever did back then because of how much social media can just spread things around really quick. And I think that's kind of crazy. And it could be a good and bad thing,
It
obviously.
can. There's so much great thing, like good things in social media you can learn too. And I was gonna actually say from your plane one, it was like this is like one little example too, but flying with Hudson and he's a Frenchie, and literally someone on the comments was like, "You can't fly with French bulldogs. She's probably faking this." I was like, I don't even know how I'd accomplish that, but like,
It's funny you say that though, because
okay.
there are plane in their Instagram planes in LA that you can go
I think we
to make
talked
it
about
look
this one
like,
time
yeah,
on
you
a
can make it
podcast.
look
You
like
had
you're
said that, and I was
flying.
like, yeah, I was like, I would not do that, but okay, like,
That's
it's
a
just
lot of
like
work to go out of your
yeah,
way to do
to,
that.
like, not give helpful information, like, I'm just sharing my experience and trying to be helpful, but okay, but it's just, like, no matter what you do, you're never gonna make everyone happy, and you're sharing things that, like, for us, it's like we're sharing things we love and that make us happy, and, maybe some people learn from some of our posts, maybe some make people smile, like, there's so many different great things about social media, and I feel like that's something that, like, we wanted to also talk about on the podcast. It's like, yeah, we've thought about quitting so many times, but we haven't because we love
Mhm.
it, obviously.
Mhm.
Like, there's like, if we wanted to, we would have quit a long time ago. And something you actually said earlier was a lot of people don't push through the hard times. And I think that's actually kind of interesting. I don't know if there's anything we can talk about there, but I feel like that's something we've grown a lot from. What is pushing through the hard things and putting ourselves in not the most comfortable situations and not just giving up when things are hard.
Totally. And I think it shows, is it perseverance? Is that kind of what that is, pushing through and like keep
Yeah.
going? Yeah, I think perseverance says a lot about someone's character too. And also having a perspective check on it, like making sure that when you are on social media, you're not being like, "Oh gosh, I have it so easy," because I've it's funny because this is just a small example, but in high school, my freshman year, I was in an all girls English class. It was so weird. It was a test. They were just trying it out. It was a mixed gender high school, so it wasn't like an all girls high school, anyways. And I remember going in. I was really upset because I'm like, why am I always in like all these test experiments for schools and stuff like that? But there was a girl that was sitting in there, and she was so gangly, so awkward, and just weird. And I was like, gosh, she's a weirdo. Well, she ended up becoming my best friend. So it's just like those things, like when you automatically just kind of assume things and then or you spread information or whatever. It's funny how life ends up working out, but having a perspective on, you know, oh, well, they have it so easy, and be like, well, do you have it easy? No. So making sure you're not assuming that they have it easy, because everybody goes through the dirt and or the mud isn't the mud. Everyone goes through the mud at some
Yeah.
point in their life. And so it's just making sure you're, like we said, not comparing and then also not bullying.
100%. Actually, something I was just thinking of was, have you seen that? Okay, it was on TikTok, so maybe you haven't, but it was on TikTok. It's this thing going around right now of a podcast that they were talking down on people that like are doing social media but aren't getting a lot of views. Did you see that?
No.
Oh, I'd have to find it. But a lot of people are coming on and like making like TikToks about it, about how, like, it's so mean talking down to people that aren't, like, doing well because you have to start somewhere. That's pretty much, like, what most of them are saying. Like, you have to start somewhere, and it shows so much about a character when you're getting 10 likes or you aren't getting all these views because you have to go through that, and it's not it was very well said. I was watching actually right before this. I'm just, like,
Interesting.
thinking off the top of my head. But it was, like, how on this one podcast, these people had a lot of followers, and they were talking down about people that are, like, starting out and, like, how embarrassing it is, and it's, like, then I watched one, like, then it started showing them to me, and it was, like, somebody talking about it and being like, "You have to do these cringy things, and you have to do things that are putting yourself in uncomfortable situations to be successful. If you were just successful, everybody would just be successful. Like, you have to go through things that aren't the easiest to get to the other side." And I feel like that was something like us, like, yeah, there's no matter what, like, there's gonna be times on social media, maybe you're gonna love it and everything's going great, and then there's gonna be times on social media that it's hard. And I think that's just something that not everybody sees, and then for people to talk badly about people that are trying, like, I give it to anybody that's trying social media because or even just posting for fun. Like, I have an account that's just for, like, I've had since, like, middle school, and, like, I just post on there for fun. Like, if you wanna do that too, like, that's great. If you don't wanna post, like, there should be no judgment on how you do it. It's like, if you enjoy it, that's all that matters.
Absolutely. I think it's really important that you just make sure you reflect in what are your intentions behind doing it. That's so important, and making sure that you're not, at the end of the day, you're not making other people feel like trash for what they're, striving for or trying to work towards. I mean,
Yeah.
shame
You know how
on
many
them.
embarrassing videos we've all put out? Like, not
Oh
embarrassing, but,
gosh.
like, me dancing with Hudson, like, yeah, there's been times I'm like, "Whew, that one makes me, like," when like, when I think of people I know watching them, I'm like, "Ooh, that makes me a little" but it's
That's
like, it's
hilarious.
funny and it's too, like
Yeah, when you said embarrassing videos, I was thinking of like 2010 Facebook
Oh,
posts. Like,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
cringy. Like, oh gosh,
Yeah, yeah.
like
I mean,
when
they're
they
not
say,
embarrassing, but, like, your
when
little, like
Facebook, yeah, they'd be like, Haley is, and then you like feeling focused or whatever,
yeah.
feeling happy. And then it's like, I feel good today. I had a test and now I'm gonna go out to dinner with my friends feeling good. It's like, oh gosh. The way social media has
Yeah.
evolved over days, I'm like, how do I delete all of these, please, or just like hide them from everyone so they don't look.
Yeah, there's been I know I've seen, like, where it's, like, recommended photos, and it's, like, me doing a photo shoot when I was, like, 10, and I was like, "Wow, this is embarrassing," but also when I say embarrassing, I mean, like, I don't know, I don't get, like, actually embarrassed, like, it's
Yeah,
kind of funny to me, it's, like, cute, you were 10 or, like, even, like, the dancing videos, it's like, yeah, I probably wouldn't dance in front of, like, a bunch of people I knew like that, but, like, it's still fun, and it,
oh,
like,
I
makes
would.
people laugh and, like, smile.
Absolutely, I would totally, but I would shamelessly dance with my dog in public. I do actively
I
do
love
that
it.
though. I have no
I
shame.
love it.
That's hilarious. I love this topic because it is so applicable to just about everyone. I mean, even if you're not on social media, learning to not bully and not compare. These are lessons you can just apply into your life. I mean, there's just like literally, and that's what this season 2 has been all about. I mean, just like these little lessons that we've learned over time and being able to incorporate them, share them with you. I mean, we've definitely talked a lot about some of the personal struggles and joys we've gone through
So much.
this last season, and I
Yeah.
mean, it's only gonna get better from here.
Definitely. Okay, so something I was gonna say, and I actually thought this before I got on the podcast today, was I think back to when I first like thought about doing a podcast, and like that scared me so bad. Like thinking about sitting down and having conversations for like 45 minutes or an hour and not overthinking what I was saying. Like that was not how I was before I started this podcast. And I think that is so cool because we pushed ourselves like to do it. Like at first, yeah, it was scary. Yeah, there was so much fear, like yeah, it was
Yeah.
exciting, but like there's also fear. And it's so cool to see how far we've already come and how much we've shared and how much more we're opening up. And we have so many exciting plans for season 3. We are not quitting social media. Season 3
No,
is in the
no.
works and we have so many fun things coming. We already got a lot planned and we have a lot more planning coming because we are actually taking a teeny tiny break so that we can get a few things lined up. But season 3 is coming out super soon and we
Mhm.
are both really excited.
It's funny you said that, not overthinking the things you say and, like, being nervous about that, because I was literally telling Bryce yesterday, he's like, "Why don't you guys do, like, a run through, like a test run on, like, your episodes?" And I was like, "First of all, no." And I'm like, "Second of all, Bailey would overthink it way too hard then the second round, I think." I'm so just like, "Nope, that's nope. We just want the raw, just who we are. Here we go. Let's do
I'm
it. Action."
impressed that I, like, edit it and then re-listen to it, and I don't. That is what I
That's
mean. I'm like,
impressive.
"Wow, I have changed so much from just doing
Wow.
this." Wow. Because, like, old me would've gotten, like, 2 minutes in and be like, I coulda said that better. Ooh, that didn't come off because it's hard." Like,
That's
sometimes
so
you're
funny.
thinking as you're talking, and it comes out a little different than, like, you want it to, but, like, you're just having a conversation. That's what's so fun about podcasting is it's not put together, like,
No, it's
picture perfect.
cash.
Yeah, it's casual.
Comment, oh, yeah. Be sure to comment how many photos you have on your camera roll. We wanna see how many photos. I don't know if anyone can top Bailey's though,
I
150,000.
know.
Holy
I'm
crap.
curious. I'm excited to see this. This will be fun.